Meet Kent Yoshimura, the founder of Neuro Gum. 10 years ago, this guy was a college student mixing supplements in his kitchen while trying to balance a life of neuroscience and competitive athletics. He needed something better than energy drinks or coffee to keep him going. But what he didn't realize is his solution to this would turn into a $100 million business. Did I mention he was on Shark Tank? But more on that later. In this interview, Ken shares how to test and validate your product idea without wasting money, the strategies he used to get free press and build credibility, how to narrow down your target audience to scale faster, and don't miss the end of the interview where he shares his advice for growing and starting your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I'm Ken Yoshimura, co-founder and CEO of Neuro Gum and Mints, which is a product that you might have seen floating around these last 2 years. I started as an athlete and on a path towards neuroscience as a career. So I was training pretty seriously in judo and Muay Thai. I was traveling to do both of those sports. And when trying to balance my education in neuroscience alongside my athletic career, I realized that I needed something that would help me balance my life out a little better. And the supplements during that time, like supplements back like a decade ago, were so unregulated. People were just launching whatever the hell they wanted. And I wanted to at least put something in my body that I knew was safe and wouldn't get me popped if I was going into competition. So I started mixing my own supplements, was looking at nootropics specifically. That was essentially V0 of what eventually became Neuro Gum. You know, when Ryan, my co-founder, who used to be one of the fastest kids in California, an athlete of his own on chapter of his cross-country and track team, he got injured his sophomore year of college, became paraplegic. I was giving him these supplements to really get him back into the groove of things. And on a scuba diving trip together, both of us were taking these pills and being like, hey, this is a weird look in public, taking pills. And we also didn't want to drink energy drinks or coffee or any of these other alternatives. It became obvious to us, like, what's something people don't innovate on? Gum and mints, accessible. You know, it's something people have in their pocket that's shareable. You know, that was 10 years ago.
Other than using these for personal use, when did you see the validation that this could become a consumer product?
So when we first launched, I was already part of like a nootropics community and people who were mixing supplements on their own on Reddit. And there's this concept of crossing the chasm, which is you try to get your initial consumer group before expanding out into other consumer groups. And I think we were just intrinsically doing that without necessarily aiming to do that because we weren't business people or marketing people. But this nootropics community, when we launched on Indiegogo, immediately picked it up. We raised our goal in like 3 hours or something crazy like that. And then Time Magazine picked us up literally that same day, later that day. And that's when we kind of knew that we had like a minimum viable product. And then from there, Dr. Oz at the end of the month reached out to us after our campaign ended, and we just went national. And that was kind of the start of our Neuro Gum career. There's stages to a business, and I don't think we knew how to capitalize on that level of attention and impressions that we were getting during that time. So, you know, like we got this huge pop at the beginning, and then we continued to grow obviously over the years. But it wasn't until like the team got built out, we went on Shark Tank, we started getting an understanding of how we should run our business, that we elevated ourselves to another level.
For those who don't know what crowdfunding is, that's basically you're receiving money for orders.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess crowdfunding can be seen in different ways. You crowdfund for a passion project that you have and go to friends and family, which is typically how I think crowdfunding is used. We use it to get pre-sales. And the way I look at crowdfunding now, because people are like, oh, should we go on Indiegogo or Kickstarter to launch our own project? And it's like, during that time that we launched, that was a platform that was getting a lot of eyeballs naturally. And I think whatever it happens to be, like whether it's a TikTok now, which is getting an insane amount of impressions, or Kickstarter at that time, which was getting an insane amount of attention because they were doing their own corporate PR, tap into those platforms because then you already have access to an audience that exists out there. And that's, I think, what we were able to do when we popped off. We were on the homepage of Indiegogo, which led to however many people are visiting their site. I don't know, but like, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of impressions, which continued to elevate us as our campaign went on.
What happens after the campaign? Is there kind of like a freak out moment where you realize you have to get all these pre-orders made and delivered?
Yeah, I mean, I can show you pictures from back in the day, but it was me, my roommate, who's now our COO, Tyler, and then Ryan would come in from the office, you know, like once or twice a week. My friend Sam, who would be visiting me, we were all just packing boxes, and I would go to USPS every single morning and drop off product. And my phone number was the customer service line. So I was getting phone calls, the products were delayed. It was so grassroots the way we did it. And just like really started from a bedroom idea, right? So, and the 2 pallets of our initial order were just sitting in my warehouse, or like in my apartment instead of a warehouse. So they're just like sitting in my kitchen, and these 2 like massive pallets. And yeah, we would just pull from there, pack it up, and ship it out.
How many pre-orders was that?
Probably like 10,000, like 8,000 to 10,000. Yeah.
At that time when you kind of explode on Indiegogo and these other platforms, had you guys already thought about manufacturing? Was that even like a consideration at the time?
Well, yeah. So we were manufacturing, like, we did like R&D for about a year with a super small mom and pop manufacturer that is still a manufacturer to this day. They scaled with us, and we're like the biggest company that they work with. But they sent us the product. They did our R&D, sent us the product based on like an MOQ that they had, which was very low at the time in retrospect. And I remember when the FedEx guy came with his like pallet jack in the truck, he was like, "All right, so where's the loading dock?" And we're like, "What's a loading dock?" Just drop it in here. Here's my kitchen. There's space here. And so he wheeled it in.
So how did you find the right manufacturing partners for this? Was that really time consuming, or did you have any criteria that you were looking for? I'm sure you guys were super new and maybe didn't have a lot of experience doing this.
Yeah, we approached it very innocently, but there's resources online. I mean, Google is your best friend, but I think we got so lucky because every other gum manufacturer in the United States, which is owned by, one of like the big dogs, like the Wrigley's or the Cadbury's of the world, they didn't want to take us. They like literally laughed us off when, we're like, we want to make this thing, and this is how much money we have, which was not that much money. Just going through, we used a service called thomasnet. I think it's thomasnet.com, which is weird, or thomas.net, but it's just like a yellow books for manufacturers.
You're one of the first of the kind products that I've been lucky enough to interview. What was the cost to get that final iteration of Neuro Gum created?
Yeah, so I think we invested $20,000 for our first batch, and that was savings that Ryan and I had saved up.
When I was doing my research for this interview, I came across like Neuro Gum wasn't maybe the first caffeinated gum. Others had tried. I think Wrigley's tried a few years before you. Everybody else, not everybody else, failed. How was Neuro Gum successful where these other guys failed?
So I think the way everyone was approaching it was like, energy drinks are so big right now, or energy shots are so big, like let's just put that into a gum. And the thing is, when you do that, the gum tastes like absolute garbage. Like, there's a reason that a can of Red Bull has, I don't even know, it's like 30 something grams of sugar in it, right? It's like an egregious amount of sugar. They do that because all the active ingredients taste terrible. And for us, we have very novel ways, and we're on like iteration number 32 or something with our product. But we're constantly thinking about like, and I'll just say like the manufacturing terms, but like, what is micro encapsulation? What are some like natural sweeteners that have like different sweetness profiles? Like, we're so considerate, I think, relative to everyone else about how good our product needs to be. Like, we use methylcobalamin instead of cyanocobalamin because of how the extraction process is a lot safer, just in general, and how much more bioavailable it is in the body. We use natural caffeine instead, although synthetic caffeine is like hits you way harder. There's a long tail to natural caffeine that makes it way more effective for focus. Like, I think those considerations also are like Wrigley's not doing that. You know what I mean? These big companies don't care. They're just trying to launch a product and they're looking at the dollar signs. Like, Ryan was a chemistry major. I was a neuroscience major. We were both going to go into the sciences and like medical fields. Like, we approach innovation through that lens rather than the lens of just dollar signs. And obviously, as a business, you have to think about the dollar signs. But I think that really just comes later, and it stacks on top of one, creating a great product.
Do you mind talking about revenue?
Yeah.
Your last few years, maybe what you're doing currently, whatever you're willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I will say like year-over-year growth is like double or triple every single year. And then, this year, let me just count the number of zeros. Like, I guess that it would be like, we'll be on track to do closer to 100 million, like on ARR. Like,
holy cow.
Like, yeah.
Good for you guys. That is awesome.
We're still like, let's just say like we're 3/4 of the way there. We're gunning for it, let's say.
The written interview that you did, you mentioned meta ads being a really strong marketing channel for you, but you had to build credibility, and that was crucial. How did you build that credibility?
So we reached out to, again, like everything we did is incredibly grassroots, which is helpful to learn the entirety of the business. But anyone that wrote about anything similar to our product, biohacking, nootropics, caffeine, gum, we found the journalist's email and reached out by email personally to every single one. And so we cultivated a list of like hundreds of journalists that we just reached out to, sent them samples, and built our credibility by just not necessarily hiring a PR firm for thousands of dollars a month, but doing it ourselves and building those relationships with journalists.
And what was that aha moment when you saw that Neuro Gum was resonating with the customers? How did that impact your strategy?
Everything starts with the consumer. And one of the big mistakes we made early on was trying to sell to everyone. Because when you try to sell to everyone, you sell to no one. But when we found that it was resonating with a certain demographic and then expanded too fast, we really brought it back to our core focus, which was who are the people that need energy and focus? Who are the people that need an accessible product that helps them get through their day? And we're like, people that work in the tech industry. So there's a huge one. Biohackers, obviously, because that was our first demographic that we chose. And then now we're looking at gamers and like middle-aged women that are potentially having kids that really need that focus to get through their day. But if you're a mom, you're not carrying like a Monster Energy drink around, but something like this to be a good alternative. So we've broken it up more into like very specific consumer groups to be able to communicate with them in different ways.
Do you have any recommendation for educations like books or anything else that's helped you to build a strong mindset to build a business of the size you have?
Yeah, I mean, definitely read as much as you possibly can and try to, without bogging yourself down. I mean, I think a lot of books kind of say the same thing, but the way I've been reading and still continue to read is looking at very specific avenues that I want to focus on. So, early on, it might have been like Crossing the Chasm, like books like Crossing the Chasm, or how to, make friends and influence others, like those kind of books that everyone talks about. But then as hiring became more important, I was looking at who. It's just WHO. It's like a guide to hiring by using like a point system criteria to, identify what the best candidate is. And that's a very specific book, right? Or Traction is another book that we read with the EOS system, which I think I'll like, how do you organize a company that continues to grow beyond just the small group so that everyone can stay aligned and row in the same direction, and then obviously I try to read like a lot of history books as well, just because I'm interested in it. Like the Ben Franklin biography is like amazing. It's like that guy was incredible. I think the George Washington biography is also like, that guy was also unbelievable. Like our founding fathers, like, and they're obviously elevated, and I'm sure there's a lot of weird things that happen in the background, but when you just see what they were able to do as leaders, there's so much you could take from like the approach that they held, which is why I like reading history just in general.
So I have to ask a question. What was it like being on Shark Tank?
I mean, what's funny about Shark Tank is we were so nervous early on, and the producers help you so much with how you should present yourself, how to organize the script, because the first part is you're basically like regurgitating your pitch, right, that they practice with you. But after that, it's like an hour and a half of free flow. Once Ryan and I got in there, this felt like just talking to Shark. Like it did feel like we were talking to Shark. We were just talking to you investors. And I think we practiced so much with what questions are they going to ask? What numbers should we know? It's all the things that we needed to know when we were raising capital anyways, that it didn't, I don't know, like all that adrenaline, like once it was gone, the nerves disappeared, and it felt like we were just talking to any other investor asking us questions.
During your written interview, you mentioned a story, and I really was interested if you could elaborate on it. And that was, when you were building Neuro Gum as kind of a side hustle to get, income, you were doing clinical trials at a hospital. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
I was working for a Sony affiliate where we were pumping music for film and television, and then I quit that job to start painting murals while building Neuro Gum. And those are like the two freaking hardest things I think you can do, which is like trying to be an artist, and then, which is like every parent tells you not to do, and then try to be an entrepreneur, which is like the second riskiest thing that you could possibly So while I was doing both of these things, like with my murals, I started getting traction and making enough money where it will pay for basic things. Like it barely covered rent. So I'm thankful for that. But to be able to live in a way that I could build the business without having a job, I would do hospital stays, just for weeks or, like 2 weeks at a time, where I would just live in a hospital and they would just inject me with either placebo or a medication that they would, and then they'd take my blood markers every single day to see how it was affecting me. That's basically it. I was just in a hospital basically for like a week or 2 weeks at a time, and then there's follow-up, and they pay you for the amount of time you're staying at the hospital, which is great because you don't have to pay for food. So I had free stay and I had free food whenever I was there. And then with the follow-up, they pay you like $500 every time you go in and they draw your blood. So each clinical trial paid out like, I don't know, close to $10,000, and I would do as many as I can every year. So it was a pretty good gig, except you're living in a hospital, injecting yourself with something you don't know, and you have to eat crappy hospital food every day, and you're not allowed to like drink, like you can't do any of these things. Yeah. So there's restrictions, but and then when you're at the hospital, it's just work, right? Like I just have my laptop in front of me and I just work the whole time. So, and it like allowed me to have that space to be able to do everything I need to do.
I absolutely love the scrappy stories you're telling. I could listen to these all day.
Money was tough.
Coming into my last two questions, what advice would you give to someone looking to start their own business?
I know that's just such a loaded question. And I think finding what you're passionate about first and foremost is the most important thing, because trust me, you're going to get put through the ringer. I mean, if the clinical trial story is anything, like those are the things that I was willing to do to try to make this work, But what's funny is like when I was I think back to those times fondly, because when I was doing that, I wasn't even thinking anything about it. I was like, oh, clinical trials can be perfect because then my food is covered, my rent is covered, I get paid, and I can just work all day on the business. Like, nothing crossed my mind where I was like, I have to go through this sacrifice to be able to build this business. And I think it's because I cared so much about Neuro Gum, and I still care about Neuro Gum. Like it just felt so natural where I was like, oh, I'll do this thing because then I'll have time to be able to build what I really want to build. And you need that level of ignorance / passion in whatever you want to do.
And thank you so much, Cam, for joining us. It was a pleasure. I absolutely loved hearing all your stories, and you've built an amazing business.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.